gospel reading today is from Luke 14, verse 1 and 7 through 14. It's in the Pew Bible on the New Testament, page 77. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the place of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Word of the Lord.
Together, that we come together and we listen thoughtfully to the word that we heard in the message this morning. Amen. Good morning. Buenos dias to my young friends. Ever been invited to a dinner party? And in preparing for that dinner party, you spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to wear. And I'm not just speaking to the women, but men too, right? You think about what we're going to wear. We think about how we might impress the people that we're going to meet at this dinner party. We think about our status and how to advance ourselves. We do what's called networking. Today is Sunday, and we wear our best Sunday clothes or our best shorts if it's Tucson. And in the winter, we wear our best Levi's. Today, I was thinking about what I would wear. And I was thinking about what wristwatch I would wear. I have a tiny, tiny collection of watches. I know nowadays many people don't wear watches anymore. Since you all are relying on your cell phones, how many people have a watch? Oh, there's a few, okay. So today, given our text, I decided to wear my Casio wristwatch that I've had for over 35 years. Can you believe that? In contrast to today's Apple Watch, my humble Casio watch is a dinosaur. It only keeps time. It has a few other functions, such as it has an alarm clock, a timer, and it stores a few telephone numbers. So I thought, given our scripture today, I should wear my dinosaur Hubble limited watch. But seriously, what did we hear in today's passage? We learned about a party that takes place at the home of one of the Pharisees. It is noticed how some of the guests were scrambling to find and secure the most important seat at the dining table. On observing this, Jesus tells a parable about eternal truth. Some of you may think Jesus was giving a lecture on etiquette. Remember etiquette? In 1922, Emily Post, and that was published way before many of us were born, right? She published her book, quote, Etiquette, the Blue Book of Social Usage, in a quote. manners in society, business, and at home. According to Emily Post, etiquette is the science of living. It embraces everything. It is the code of sportsmanship and of honor. So was Jesus talking about etiquette, good manners at a wedding feast? Some of you may wonder about today's text. We wonder because we know that in Luke's writings, as observed by New Testament scholar Mark Allen Powell, Luke often emphasizes special concern for the outcast, for victims of oppression, and for others who appear to be at a disadvantage in society. And yet, here we are listening to a paragraph about a wedding feast. Stepping back from today's text and taking an overview of Luke's writings, you may notice there is a food motive in Luke's gospel. According to Paul, Luke mentions meals 19 times in his gospel. Jesus is frequently portrayed as being present at meals, and he often gets criticized for eating with the wrong people, the wrong types of people, tax collectors, widows of certain types, sinners, etc. Banquets frequently are prominent in Jesus' parables and his teachings. His first recorded miracle occurred at the wedding of Cana. So it does seem like Jesus did give instruction on social etiquette on different occasions. However, if we scratch the surface of our text today, we will find that Jesus is talking about humility, not just good manners, not just being polite. Humility, meaning our openness to receive God's grace, which allows us to put others before our own self-promotion. On reflecting on humility, let's consider what the people of Jesus' time learned from the Old Testament about humility. In Proverbs, we hear the writer's insistence that pride goes before the fall. We are told, when arrogance appears, disgrace follows. Pride goes before ruin, arrogance before failure. Earning the enmity of God and other people, we all but guarantee our own destruction. Proverb warns, do not exalt yourself in the king's presence, do not stand in the place of nobles, for it is better to be told, step up here, than to be degraded in the presence of the great. Basically, if you seek your own exaltation, you are courting disaster. Jesus was in sync with the prophets of the Old Testament. In today's text, we hear Jesus declaring, all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He reminds the people of what it takes to have a good life. He reminds them that vanity and arrogance leads to one's own downfall, and that humility leads to a good life. Jesus is evoking humility as a way of having a grace-filled life. Jesus' words are very reminiscent of Micah's mandate. Remember Micah chapter 6, verse 8, often recited? Quote, he has shown all you people what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to work humbly with God. End quote. So why is Jesus reiterating the lessons of the Old Testament when so many already have heard these words? Yes, Jesus' message echoed the fundamentals of the Old Testament, but it also went beyond those fundamentals. His message informed us that we are precious and we belong to God. God is eagerly awaiting us, waiting for us to say yes to his embrace. But But we gotta admit, walking humbly ain't easy. In our human condition, we step all over ourselves in living out our day-to-day lives. We falter when we are gripped by fear, a fear that can cloud our vision and judgment, leading us to scramble. God has given us many gifts that assist us in walking humbly. One special gift I like to highlight is the ability to be resilient. Resiliency. How do we go about increasing our capacity to be resilient? How do we live a resilient life that is characterized by hope and not by fear? For it is fear that gets us into trouble. Fear can lead us to be boastful and to puff ourselves up. Oftentimes in being boastful, we are scrambling and attempting to hide our fears, to hide our feelings of inadequacy. Here's a few things to think about. I'm thinking about building our personal resiliency. When confronted with a problem, try to avoid catastrophizing. Avoid seeing a crisis as an insurmountable problem. Accept change in our life as part of living. It happens. Move towards your goals. Work your best at making decisive decisions. Look for opportunities for self-discovery. Nurture a positive view of yourself. These are all things that, as we engage in them, it will help us build our resiliency. It will help us walk humbly. They tell a story about a gentleman who received a promotion at his job. He was promoted to being vice president at his company. The promotion went to his head, and for weeks on end, he bragged. He bragged to anyone who would listen to him that he was now a VP. His bragging came to an abrupt halt when his wife, so embarrassed by his behavior, said, "Listen, Bob, it's not that big a deal. These days, everyone's a vice president. Why, they even have a vice president of peas down at the supermarket." Somewhat deflated, Bob got his cell phone, called the supermarket to find if this was true. Ring, ring. The guy at the supermarket answers. Bob says, "Can I speak to the vice president of peas, please?" And this is what he heard in reply. "VP of fresh or VP of frozen?" It's funny, right? But we can see ourselves in this story sometimes. Not easy keeping it humble. There are different ways that we can display our humility when no one's looking, of course. We may show humility when talking with one another. In our day-to-day exchanges with our family and friends, we have the opportunity to be differential and to be receptive to their ideas and their perspectives, and whatever the circumstance may be. In allowing ourselves to be humble, we find that we can relax and not have to be competitive. It takes great confidence in oneself to be humble. Wait, confidence? Isn't that what can get us into trouble? Being confident? Actually, it's just the opposite. It is when we lack confidence that we puff ourselves up to hide our fear and inadequacies. Without confidence, we can drift into being arrogant. Confidence is in the belief in ourselves. The poet E.E. Cummings said, "Once we believe in ourselves, we can risk curiosity, wonder, spontaneous delight, and any experience experience that reveals the human spirit. So you can imagine confidence in us will take us to the next level. Jesus' words reminds us that we are able to walk humbly and confidently in the knowledge that we belong to God. Walking humbly with God leads us to recognize and to act on the gifts God has given us to be just and merciful. Civility is a companion word for humility. In these times, we often hear folks mourn the loss of civility in the public square. Civility is more than good manners. To quote the Institute for Civility in Governments out of Houston, Texas, quote, "Civility is more than just politeness, although politeness is necessary to be the first step. It is about disagreeing without disrespect, seeking common ground as a starting point for dialogue about differences, listening past one's preconceptions, and teaching others to do the same. Civility is the hard work of staying present, even with those with whom we have deep-rooted and fierce disagreements. It is political in the sense that it is necessary, prerequisite for civic action. But it is political too, in the sense that it is about negotiating interpersonal power such that one's voice is heard and nobody is ignored." Today's text is potent with Jesus' instructions on humility, which leads us to being civil with one another. You would think that Jesus would stop here. Yet as we go along in the passage, Jesus throws us a curveball. Being originally from Los Angeles, I think about the early baseball Dodger players after they moved from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. One of the great Dodger players was Sandy Koufax. Anyone remember him? A few Dodger fans? He was a fantastic pitcher who had a fierce curveball. Batters never knew what passed them when Sandy threw his curveball. Batters were just left standing there wondering what happened. Today, don't you feel a little like those batters encountering a curveball? Jesus finished talking about being humble, and then he directs us to open our table to complete strangers. This is what he said. When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, and the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, and you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Wow. No, not only are we challenged to be polite, humble, and civil in settings where we know and feel comfortable, we are also asked to open ourselves to all sorts of people. As Frank Rooney of the New York Times would characterize, a whole host of people who are not chosen by some social media algorithm or sorted by income level or screened by political affiliation. We are talking about a whole lot of diverse people being invited into our lives. How is this possible? Well, I would like to leave you with an extract from the words of Father Michel Ruiz, a Catholic priest, theologian, and writer, who's known best for his best-selling book, Prayers of Life. Quote, "Lord, why do you tell me to love all? My brothers, my sisters, my siblings. I have tried, but I come back to you frightened. Lord, I was so peaceful at home. I was so comfortably settled. My home was well furnished, and I felt cozy. I was alone, and I was at peace. shelter from the wind and the rain, kept clean, I would have stayed unsullied in my ivory tower. The first came in, Lord. There was, after all, a bit of space in my heart. I welcomed them. I would have cared for them. My very own little lambs, my own flock. You would have been pleased, Lord. I would have served and honored you in a proper and respectful way. Until then, it was sensible. But the next ones, Lord, the others, I'd not seen them. They were behind the first ones. There were more of them. They were distressed. They overpowered me without warning. They all crowded in. I had to find room for them. They came bending under heavy loads of injustice and suffering. I can't do it anymore. As they come in, they push the door, and the door opens even wider. I can't stand it anymore. It's no kind of life. Ah, Lord, I've lost everything. I don't belong to myself anymore. There's no more room for me at home. And then the Lord said, don't worry. You have gained all. While they came in, I, your Creator, slipped in among